Yeah, yeah. Okay, I almost said good morning. Hello, everybody. It's morning somewhere else. Yeah, welcome to our conversation. Yeah, I think let's get into it.
Yeah.
So I thought that maybe we'll pass questions back and forth to each other, but I thought that maybe a good way to start us off is to ask what the first sound you hear in the morning is, and then how does that shape your day? Yes.
So, we're going, we started the car.
Yes.
Okay, look.
No, when you wake up, not in the car.
No, not in the car. I'm asking, are we going
Oh, yes,
straight?
the car's moving. We're
car's
here.
moving. Okay, we are.
Like the
We
clock's
are.
going, the
We
people
clock
are
in.
sitting here.
Hi, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dani Kyengo O'Neill.
Fuck, I'm so
No,
rude.
No,
Okay,
babes,
okay, go.
please.
I think it's
fine.
It's fine.
We are here for Koleka's brilliant sonic work. Exactly. Please give us exactly. Yeah. And yes, we're having this conversation. My name is Dani O'Neill. I am a sonic artist, sound crafter, composer, and a filmmaker. And so we're going to sort of ebb and flow between our personhood and practice in the session. And starting with Koleka's question, honestly, the first thing that wakes me up in the morning, or the sound that I associate the most with the morning, because I live in the northern suburbs, there's been for years, there are these horse cart guys that ride in, like I'm literally in the burbs, like it's very peaceful, it's very quiet and whatever, very family orientated and stuff. But every morning between 9 a.m. and 12, there are these guys that come with the horse cart and they sing or like shout for iron scrap. So it's like, oh, iron. And it's like, it sounds funny, but it's like, that's literally the sound that I hear the first thing in the morning. But it sounds so like, it's like beautiful. They're like in chorus with one another. There's one guy that like shouts for the iron, and then there's like iron, oh, iron. But it's like gorgeous the way that it sounds. And that's honestly one of the first sounds that wakes me up. Other than that, it's probably someone walking past with like a boom box, listening to music on their way to school. There's a lot of people who walk to school in the neighborhood too. So those are kind of like two sounds that really set me off every morning. Yeah.
Love that. Also,
Yeah.
like, I'm like, I want to steal that scene, actually.
Yeah.
It's also the way you committed to that. The first thing I hear in the morning are birds. I don't put my alarm on anymore, except if I have to be somewhere. And I don't trust that my body clock is going to do what it needs to do, or if I've been out the night before doing the most. And then I know that I need that alarm. But for the most part, like my body clock wakes me up at the same time. The first thing I hear, birds. Sometimes the train. We live close to the train station. Yeah, basically just the start of, you can just hear that everyone's starting the day, or the day's starting. Yeah, that's me. Yeah. Then I want to know about, or I'd like us to talk about our first memorable sonic experience, or an experience sonically that changed the way that you think about sound.
I feel like it's, honestly, I think think there are two things, and for me, one of them is definitely film. And the other one, I think it's like buried very deep, and I'm literally like thinking about this right now. As I thought I had the answer, but I actually don't, because there are so many things that influence me in a sound way. Oh, okay. So one is film for sure, and just the use of sound in the visual capacity, and when I mean like visual, I don't just mean on screen, but also the visual through time. So the way that we visualize time and we visualize one another, and we sort of like see the performance of one another like happening throughout the day, and everyone's sort of like everyday textures of how you move and enunciate your movements and your interactions with one another, or our interactions with one another, also really influences me. And this kind of bleeds into the second thing, and I think which is the most influential thing for me when it comes to sound is I really struggle with being able to hear everything. So I sometimes can't quite focus on one thing when there are many other sounds happening at the same time. And my boyfriend has he tells me all the time, he's like, he's from Angola, and he's like the most wonderful, like patient person, lovely human, just like lovely human being I've ever met. And he's like, baby, are you in the room? He will be like, baby, are you here? When he can see like I'm drifting off a little, not even drifting off, it's more that my ear has caught something else while I'm in conversation with someone else. And I will pick up on literally everything. Like there will be someone having like a skinner session over there, and I can hear it. And there will be someone trying to talk to me about something that's really important, and I'm like, wait. So the thing that I guess like influences me the most with sound is my own like physiological orientation of every, like even that ticking, like I pick up on everything when it comes to sound, and it's something that I always thought was like maybe a little bit like weird with me, but then I've just kind of like learned to soften into it. Yeah. And
I think it would be so maybe you do know this, I don't know this, maybe there's someone in the audience who knows this, but I think it would be interesting to know a little bit more about the design of the inside of this instrument,
Right.
and what it is that causes that thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, if someone knows, like raise your hand and tell us. For me, like the most memorable sonic experiences I've had are actually, most of them have been in the theater, actually. Because the theater is it's a space that has like a lot of limitations. And so your imagination has to like come to the table and then some, because there isn't much that you're working with in terms of like technology, sometimes in terms of space, money, budget, and all of those things. And so sometimes I've seen some of the most incredible sonic things happen in the theater, because I think people are forced to think about sound creatively, and to push themselves. When we were talking about this question, I was trying to think, like, what's the first? The first one was in 2004, when I went to the National Arts Festival for the first time. And I saw this play that, like, rocked my socks forever. It was called Tin Bucket Drum, and it's a play by Neil Coppin. And it's a story about a little girl, Nomvula, who is born into a silent village, but she has like this, she's a drummer, and she has like this rhythm and the sound inside of her, but she's born into this village where you're not allowed to dance, you're not allowed to sing, you're not allowed to make a sound. And this is imposed by the dictator who's running this village. And it's essentially about how, like, she sort of wakes up that village and turns that thing around. But it's a one-woman show, and there is a musician who's doing all of the music, percussion, music, soundscape, all of that. Yeah, that like changed my world, honestly. Because I was like, like, interesting. You can do so much with just one body. And you don't need 50 people on stage to create different worlds. And then another one that I thought about was a play that I recently saw last year, actually, called The Promise. I don't know if any of you saw that. They did like live Foley on stage while the action was happening, and I thought that that was interesting, to think about watching a play while the actors are curating and making the sound with you watching them as you go. For me, I think the most interesting things that have happened sonically have been in this space, because it is so, it can be so limiting sometimes, but sometimes that limitation forces you to like break out into other imaginations.
Yeah. It can. The limitation can also bring like a limitlessness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you have to become, and like it's interesting also because like sound is such a embodied thing, but at the same time, it in its form and in the way that we perceive it, it's incredibly generous and very broad. So it has a lot of like thinking of like space in terms of like body and space that we like take up and can take up, but then also the space that we move through constantly, as in like concretized space like architecture and all of that. Sound also occupies a space, but that space in and of itself is very limitless. And very broad and very generous, and also very idiosyncratic and very subjective to each person, because our bodies, our capabilities of hearing are also different. So our perception of being able to hear certain pitch levels or certain low pitch levels or certain percussive sounds or all kinds of like sound devices differ from person to person, and also differ because of the language that we all acquired through our formative years. And I really want you to segueing into language and words and play and music through words and through the sound and space that sound takes up. I would love you to talk about and get into the meat of can I get a witness, and how words sound and the play between those two came to be in the album.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you want me to start at the beginning? Is that the question? I was actually going to say, before you segue into that, I was actually going to say I was going to be cheeky and say that another memorable sonic experience was watching you DJ last night. It was actually very spiritual. Like, Dani was DJing at Mom. That might not have been pleasant for the people here, but for the people over there, it was amazing. When you were playing last night, it felt so spiritual. Like, from where I was standing, it felt like the whole floor was like jumping, you know, and every time you would like change the music or the music would change, like you would just see these hands pointing at you like, yeah! So yeah, that's another memorable thing. Anyway, I just wanted to chuck in there as a way to be cheeky. But yeah, and we were talking about this and you were like, at some point in the conversation, it would be good to also talk about dancing as a way of listening. Yeah, but we can get to that.
Yeah. No, I really do. I want to, okay, so we giving you insight into our inside conversations earlier. This is also interesting because it's like things that happen in space between people before other people arrive, and what we are privy to in our conversations, and then transmuting that to an audience that's also now witnessing our conversation. And sorry, my brain is just like thinking through you witnessing us, witnessing ourselves, which is also very cute and kanzi and nice. But I was DJing last night at the Spotify Mom Festival, and a lot of very beloved people were there, and Koleka and Robin were two of those people. And I kind of, when I'm in my zone, I had a friend who works with Spotify like message me, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't even see you. And she's like, you are so locked in. Like, you were locked in when you are playing. And I think it really is something that I was telling Koleka earlier about how when I perform, I think that I go to a place that is very different from the person that I am in my everyday sort of musings and being with people. I think that in my everydayness, I'm quite reserved and soft and maybe a little bit more pulled back. But really, when I perform, I feel like I'm not there. Like, I'm giving so much, and giving so much to the relationship that exists between myself as the performer, as the DJ, or as the person who is now holding the space for everyone else who is there to experience the space through their bodies, through their spirituality, through sound. And that is really what, like, a lot like spirits, sound and music, and I think about this a lot, has a very invoking, it's like an invocation, like it's a very invoking medicine. And that relationship of being the person who is in charge of giving that to other people or presenting it to other people is something that I don't take lightly, because it is so powerful, especially in our capacity to assemble. And I also think in our capacity as Black people to assemble with one another, that our relationship to the oral and to the spiritual and to sound and to the cosmic is very, very, very interlocked. It's locked in. That relationship is locked in with one another. So, yeah, we're gonna get more into it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Shall we get into the album?
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you want to start? How it started?
Yeah.
Okay. How it started is very boring, in the sense that the organization, that is Standard Bank, was like, listen, we have some chankura if you want to think about a project. I was like, I always want to think about a project. And also, like, who would say no to money?
Yeah.
Like, which artist? Show me. And so, but I think maybe before that, we had been thinking about, so in 2020, we did an audiobook version of Collective Amnesia, which, thinking about it now, was wild. We recorded all of the poems, and we had close friends of ours, Buleng Stewart and Yano Akoema, do the sound design for that. And they literally created just like a sonic world for the book to essentially live in. But then, as time passed, we were kind of dreaming about another album or like a sonic project with fewer poems and just something a little bit more compact. And also just kind of not really putting any effort into it, thinking about it being pressed on vinyl as well. So when this call came, we thought that, okay, let's start this project. And I think that call happened in August or October or something. And then we started working on the album in November, recorded in Feb, over 3 days. I think we recorded the album in 3 days. And yeah, that's how it started. But I think in the time that Clem, who's the musical director, and I spent November, December passing, because we were in 2 different places, just passing notes, sharing references, thinking about like, okay, what do you want it to sound like? Where do you want it to go? Him sending me a list of things to listen to that I haven't heard before. I went and listened to a bunch of poetry albums that exist already because I wanted to know, like, what does a poetry album sound like? And it turns out it can sound like anything. And so, yeah, that's how it started. Lots of research, back and forth, Google Docs, and just Clem being the musical ear between us. I would send him things, and he would sort of say, can you try it maybe in a different vibe or whatever? And he would send me music, and we just kind of did it like that before we got into studio. I know 3 days sounds like very short, but I think the work before kind of prepped us for that. So hence I say it's boring. You know, it's not like, I don't know, like Moses came in my dream or whatever.
You spoke really honestly about how I want you to kind of give them perspective as well on. Remember when you first launched the vinyl, you were speaking about how you learned that making an album is not the most glamorous. It's not the most glamorous process. It's like really super, super tedious, and there's so many moments of detail that have to be taken into account. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, it is very tedious. I mean, I don't think that this is the experience of somebody who is releasing an album with a label, right? Because if you're part of a label, then other people are doing all of the other in-between things. But you would also know this as an independent somebody, you are immersed in the creative aspect of the project, but also in the administrative part, even though like there are other people taking care of other things. Certain things along the way would need my input as well. So it was, I think I was very, I was surprised. I was shocked at just how much, like, it's not just about going into the stew, you know, like, oh, we in the stew, you know, like, we making music. No, it's not. That's not what's happening at all. Like, I think I would have been happy to just be in the stew, you know, like, but very quickly I realized that there was just so much more, you know, just one, dreaming and thinking about the collaborators that you want on the project, organizing the project to actually happen, and also just me as the person who is giving voice to the poems in the project, while other people are playing drums and sax and this and this and this, just to also get myself in the zone of like, how do I also lock into who I need to be as a performer in this project outside of the administrative and all of that? Yeah, it was very shocking. There was just so many steps. Like, even when we were done with the album, recorded it and went for mixing, when it came back, I had to listen. Like, I just got so sick of my own voice at some point. I was just like, I can't do this. Sometimes, like, Robert and I, when we would need to give feedback, I'd be like, I can't listen to the album with you. We have to separate. Go somewhere else, you listen somewhere else. Because I just would get self-conscious about, like, listening with other people. But even when the mixing and all of that was done, just the other things, you know, like getting a barcode for the product, you know, getting things registered with SAMRO, and giving a damn about those things, you know, like royalties matter, you know, because this is also the thing that messes a lot of people up in the long run. It's those little things. So it was a lot of work, but also not all of it. I didn't dread all of it. A lot of it was also very insightful and good to know. Yeah.
Lovely. I love that you were very honest in that moment. Also because in making, it was just a moment that we shared and that Koleka shared with me in the now, like knowing of making. Like you don't know something until you do it, and then you're like, oh wait, this is not just being in the stew, or this is not just like making a book or compiling. There are many things that go into it, and I thought it was such an honest moment. And also I wanted to take that into sort of asking you a question before we get into the listening part. So this is from this really wonderful text. It's an amazing interview with Susan Sontag by Jonathan Cott for Rolling Stone magazine, and they just go through like everything imaginable, just her whole repertoire of writing, but also touching on music and on sound and on art. And so he asks her this really lovely question that I also want to ask Koleka is, do you think that the nervous system in some way, or your nervous system in the time of making the album, in some way influenced your writing style and influenced the way that we, as the listener, receive what you've put together for us? Give us some insight into what was going on in your body and in your nervous system at the time of making this.
I think it's a good question because a thing that will never lie is your voice. Like your voice won't lie, you know, like you hear it when someone sings and they're nervous, you're gonna hear them because it's like you can't, they're not disconnected at all. And so a lot of the poems, I think with the one poem was written sort of later or during the process of making this, but all the other poems had been written before. And so it was just a case of thinking about which poems can sit together in this project. So there wasn't really a writing process necessarily. But in terms of like recording, the recording happened in Johannesburg. And Johannesburg for me as a place is not easy. I don't find that I'm relaxed mentally when I'm in that city. I'm like always like a bit like alert. Even if like I pray that day or I try to meditate or whatever, like I think that there's just something about the city energetically that always gets me a bit like, and so having to go into the studio and do the work, I had to find ways of getting the body from to and being in that space. But it was also incredibly nerve-wracking, like to be in a room with musicians who like know they shit, they prepared, and you are like staring, you are the star of the show, and now you have to bring like some sort of performance or like a readiness to do the work. And so I think that I was very conscious about just little things, not drinking during that time, not doing certain things that would compromise the body in any particular way, trying to keep like stress down, because I think that those things they inform how you show up in the work. And also just trying to regulate the part of you that wants to show up in a space like that perfect. You know, perfect, ready, you on your things, but sort of just letting, I think Clem did such a good job of being like, just let it go, girl. Like, it's okay. Like, we're here to explore, we're here to play. Yeah.
Nice. It really it shows in the work. I think one of the most powerful things in the album is the use of, obviously, the use of voice. Not just your voice, but the way that vocalities, but also instrumental like voice, so the layering of the instruments along with your voice really comes through in this anchoring, cinematic, onomatopoeic way. And we're going to get into the meat of that. Let's play one of the first tracks.
Okay, which one?
Let's start with Celebrated and Unseen, yeah. And then of Grandmothers.
So back to back.
Mm-hmm.
For the ones buried under elaborate tombstones that cost more than the money they left behind. A family too ashamed to bury publicly a celebrity who died lonely and in debt. Nothing to show for being loved, lauded, and paraded on pedestals. Spinning BMWs with an empty bank account, popping bottles with borrowed wealth, and all the wealth in the music video couldn't even buy your corpse a suit. For your peers, the artist friends who will stock fell for your funeral, buying the same grace for when their time comes. For the ones who traveled the world and went broke from keeping an image. For the ones consumed by the grit and the grind, bulls like a tether. You who die before you die, haunted by a utopia that is always elsewhere. Who die with spirits in transit, whose accolades are brought home, draped in a country's flag that only applauded you when you were not home. Who die singing Igqirha Lendlela in subways, teaching Europeans how to dreadlock and Madiba jive, how to be more like you and nothing like you at all. At home, they believe that you are a musician heard by thousands. Your arthritis strumming a guitar on a train in Berlin can verify. Years after your death, your gallerist still makes euros from your art, while your children piece together your belongings in the nothing you left behind. You who die celebrated and unseen, celebrated and misnamed, celebrated and lonely, celebrated and paranoid, celebrated and suicidal, celebrated and without medical aid, celebrated and without funeral cover. What currency is used to unveil your tombstones?
to our grandmothers.
Of grandmothers who gathered the family to kneel 5 to midnight on New Year's Eve. Of grandmothers who held the pistol as tightly as the Bible and taught you to revere the devil as fervently as you did the Lord. Who taught you that the devil and the Lord sometimes run in the same circles. Of grandmothers who loved men who loved themselves more. Of grandmothers who touched the hem of Jesus' garment with the same hands that played the lotto. Healers who held onto one illness while letting go of another, who taught you how to let it go by putting it down, who knew when to say, "This is not mine." Of grandmothers who knew the distance between their grief and their great-great-great-grandmothers could be measured in the things we tiptoe around. Of grandmothers who poured their tea onto saucers and twirled and twirled. Of grandmothers who put their feet up and danced, who marched this way and that way for themselves, for you, who were spat on by Boers and still looked up, who could scope, skit and donor with the same hands that prayed, who could tell you, "Tack," in Jesus' name, with the same mouth that said, "Be healed," in Jesus' name.
Or whatever.
Okay, should I go? Did you want to say anything?
No, what do you want to talk about? Yeah.
Okay, so firstly, that this album for me is very cinematic. It's in the way that you present the metaphors and the way that you've crafted story through song, but also in the way you present certain scenes and scenarios and worlds. And especially in these two songs, in Celebrated and Unseen and Of Grandmothers, especially in Of Grandmothers, so there's a scene that stands out for me, and I told you about this, like it's the skopskiet in Donner, and the kind of like poetics of dissatisfaction with men who love themselves more, the women who loved men who loved themselves more. So I want you to speak a bit about sonics and metaphor and your use of cinema and onomatopoeic in both. And then we can I play a track from that? Like
yes.
Yeah. So I want to play you, because it's a listening party as much as we are also having chats. a track that sort of like stood out for me with that image of Skopskiet and Donald, because it's such a South African colloquialism, but it's also so potent in the way that it paints an image, right? But equally, in South Africa, we have a great understanding of how to sort of transmute violence into sonic joy and into collective joy and assembly, right? So one track that really kind of, it just sits with me is this song by, it's a song by Candy Master and Simple KB, and it's also about, it's a Bacardi track, but you'll hear, I'll stop talking. So the name of the song is Skop en Donoro. And I really want you to talk to this like incredible, insatiable, like just incomparable ability that we have as a country also to transmute our collective violence and violence into spaces of like complicated spaces of joy and sonic like remembering and sonic joy and sonic like coming together. Yeah.
Yo, I don't know. That's a hectic question. Like, I don't know how much I can speak to that, but as you were playing the song, I was also just thinking about like, I was thinking about the song Munating Pulai, which is like fun. Like I'm having so much fun, I could die, you know, or like joy so much that you are like, drive yourself to the point of like death. But there's a lot of these kinds of like sonic materials, let me call it that, that are happy and joyful, but if you listen closely, like there's a lot going on there. I was just thinking about the song that's just popped off recently, Chwala Bam. I was actually listening to that the other morning and I was like, wait. Like this song, it's great, it's a vibe, but I don't know if I want to be talking about my liquor like that, you know. But I think that there's a lot of things like that we've sort of been able to, as a country, we have this way of everything is a laugh and a grap and a good time. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, people are going through the most, and I think that there's something interesting there. It's not a judgment necessarily. I think more so observation. I think it is interesting how sometimes violence in this country or violent things, when they are translated into a sonic something, it does tend to sound very joyful and happy. But maybe that's like a conversation about like our collective psyche and what's going on there. But you asked me some other things in that. Yeah.
I think it also, or at least for me, there's like a thread between that and what of grandmothers and celebrated and unseen offers us in the story that you've crafted of the character central to the story, but also in the way that it's set up musically. It's like the play between dissatisfaction and satisfaction, and also the play between transmuting something that is a violence that has been imposed on you or that has been put on you, but the constant like alchemy of that violence. And I think that the story in Celebrated and Unseen is of the artist, and specifically the condition of the Black artist, like throughout our sonic history in South Africa, or like art history in South Africa, that's really been set up in the way that you paint the story, with the constant, like facing constant transgression, not just in your own country, but then also outside, but then alchemizing that, like constantly having to like alchemize. And then also with the story of Grandmothers, is also that constant like alchemy. I thought that would, like, sonically and poetically, it was just like, yeah.
Yeah. Clem and I spoke a lot about like how to put the poems in their own world, or to how to create worlds for the poems that would hold them. And we talked with Celebrated and Unseen, we talked about this. He kept on having this image of a well-known or like a prolific musician, South African musician, basking somewhere in Europe with his saxophone, standing there, and sort of having come to a particular place in his life, and just negotiating with like being at a particular place in your career and in your life, but it not showing or translating in terms of like finances or well-being in the way that it should for where you are. And so we spoke about a lot of, we spoke about what the poems meant for him and what kinds of worlds he wanted to create for them musically. Yeah.
Should we go to the next song?
Yes.
Yeah. Should we do Milk and Honey?
Oh, what's the type? Shall we play? Which one do you want to go to? Citation.
Yeah, Red Sea and Citation.
Oh,
Red Sea.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe, shall we start with Holy Technology, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why not? Yes.
oceans are being militarized, vessels hijacked and capsized, missiles baptized in the Red Sea, bird songs drowned by sirens and artillery. Forgive those who trespass against us. They misuse the land for wanderlust. The Titanic foreboding, billionaires imploding on a seabed that has laid masses to rest. We are so desperate to test the limits of ambition, mistaken extraction for expedition. The remains of villages buried under glacial boulders keep score of world records broken on Sherpa's shoulders. Summits crowded with explorers determined to be the first. They drive their hearses into the crater's abyss. Forgive us our self-importance. We navel gaze so far, we fail to see our neighbors. We are collectives driven by individual agendas. We speak on behalf of those we silence. Resistance, often framed as non-compliance. We are immobilized by our legacies of performed regret, our sorrows. Sorries have become a spectacle. Forgive the spectacle, we are easily distracted. Eyes gorged in vain. Freedom coming tomorrow remains the refrain. Currencies and weapons lead negotiations. No justice, no peace on ongoing occupations. Rotten seeds, the root cause giving rise to demonstrations. Human rights violations severing United Nations. The corrupt lead and rule with spilled blood. They try to lull us into amnesia and apathy using false symbols of liberty and victory. But love and solidarity is powerful weaponry, and we will never forget the unpayable debt. We will never forget the unpayable debt. Killjoy, sister outsider, sister citizen, sisters of the yam on black, sister street, sister Bettina. You got to seize the disease with these. We hold savannas with the same hands that hold degrees. We groove and we read, we dream. for death or dying, we have come to bear witness here where black girls do not die.
Yes, honey.
I actually want to say two things. I know we're running out of time and we have to close. I want to say two things. The first is that one of my favorite kind of documentary, I love documentaries, one. Two, but I especially love documentaries about like people who do these like wild adventures where they go to like the edge of the earth, you know, and they're trekking up that volcano, and then the volcano's like, guess what, bitch? Today's the day. So those are like my favorite kinds of documentaries, and I watch so many of them of like people just like doing these. Well, one, I like to watch it because I like to see people stretch themselves beyond what they think they can do, but I also like to watch it because I like to see the ways in which a lot of people have no regard or sense of the fact that the earth is going to do what it wants to do when it wants to do it. And so I've been watching so many of these kinds of documentaries over time, and there's been a poem that's kind of been sitting in the back of my mind where I'm like, I want to write about these people who just like, you know, like billionaires going to go see the Titanic. Where are you going? Where are you going, you know? So Red Sea, the poem Red Sea was born out of like my like love for seeing like these people just like the earth going like, I'm earth, bro. Like,
Yeah.
and then the other thing I want to say is when the album was done, Clem really wanted to. He's like, well, in the UN citation with "We've come to bear witness here where black girls do not die," and I really want to end the album with like a joyous sound. And so can you do me a favor? It can be anywhere. It can be in the car. It can be wherever. Can you guys just like record a moment of joy in your lives with like friends or whoever? So citation actually ends with a recording of our friends at a dinner, and we're just having a conversation and just being ourselves. And I thought that was just such a nice little to add to the album of just like a personal moment of joy to just insert in there, just as a reminder, you know, also that life is full.
Life is full.
Yeah, life is full.
And I think that's what stands out about Red Sea and Citation is your use of archival sound, or the use of the archive and the use of your everyday archive, I think also is just incredible, because I think that to sort of like thread it to a pop culture moment, we hear a lot lately, a lot of pop artists using what's called gang vocals in production. So it's kind of like, for instance, this sound. Everybody get your own fast. So that sound of like everyone, the fullness, but in the way that you use it is crafting the archive, but also speaking to the archive. And in the moment in Red Sea where you used no justice, no peace to like back up your voice, I thought that was amazing. And it also, if you want to speak to like a moment where the archive or speak to the archive, like the use of archival sound in collective joy, laughter, chatter in the background. I think also in the way that it reflects sort of the complex subjectivities of people and specifically of our people. It's also really, can I
Yes,
add one
yes.
moment to that? Okay, so with Citation, I love that song. Why? Because the way that the beat is in complex time, and it drops in between complex time and simple time. Like it has these moments of like reprise between complex time and simple time. And I thought that was just like so fantastic in the way that it was crafted musically, because it drops, most of it is like in that dum 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 dum, and then there are these moments of like softness that come in at 2 minutes and 3 minutes that bring you out but then bring you back in. And at the same time you are talking about like the complex subjectivities of black girls and black girls not dying, and the archive of remembering, and the archive of living and being. And maybe you can talk to that. Yeah.
Quicks. We're going to wrap up.
Yeah.
I think that I'm, as somebody who works with research a lot and brings a lot of that research into the work, I think what you have taught me now is gang vocals. I learned that today. I was like, wow, babes, thesis my album, yes. I think that it's sort of inevitable that there's going to be this kind of layering that goes on, because research by nature is very layered. So there's that. And actually, fun fact, when we were recording Citation, it took the longest, because when I sent, it was actually the only poem that I sent to Clem. The other poems I had to send, he'd give feedback, I'd have to send it back again. Citation, I sent it to him once. He was like, don't change anything. And he composed the music just from that first and only recording, which then caused problems in the studio, because I came in and I just wanted to flow. I wanted to like, do it my own way. He was like, no. Like it has you have to keep the timing, because Jude is there playing in the timing, the other people are in timing, and my sister, you have to be in the timing as well. And it also taught me a lot about like committing to something, not because you are rigid and you can't like play and give it something else, but because there's something about honoring the way that it's composed and what it will do to how it's received to the listener. I don't have like the technical words for it, but I think that this process taught me a lot about just like rhythm, pause, silence, and composition, actually, and honoring the composition.
Yeah, and you use silence, your use of silence even on holy technology is amazing, because you expect there to be a poetic sort of voice over, but the music in and of itself and the instrumentation in and of itself becomes the lyrical silence is then filled by the instrumentation, and it does something that speaks very beautifully to the track that follows, which is Red Sea, and the sort of rumble and drone that comes in Red Sea. It follows beautifully on one another, and that's also a part of crafting an album, is really having to sit with each track and see, wait, which one go, I'm sure you went through this process, it's like, see which track goes before which track, putting which track, like putting things in place basically to craft an idea. So yeah.
We could yap all day, but I think let's close it here. And I want to say thank you to you.
Thank you to you.
I think on another day, in another situation, there's so much that I would love to pick your brain about, because you study this. Like, you are literally writing a dissertation, or supposed to be writing a dissertation. Hint, hint. But yeah, thank you so much for holding the space today and
Thank you.
talking about this project that's very dear to my heart. And thank you for showing up today to listen to us ramble and to veer off into different directions. And apologies for going over time, or thank you rather for sitting with us for longer. Yeah, have a good Sunday.
Yeah. Have a soft Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you.